So we're going to go ahead and begin. If some people will join us, that is absolutely great. And if not, then they will we'll go ahead and speak to them also so that they can get that information on the replay. First thing is I want to say welcome to everybody to the free webinar today for healthcare professionals. We will be talking about the CEP. I'll be telling you a little bit about what that used to stand for a little bit in a minute, but we will be talking more about it, how it is a little bit groundbreaking. It's a new healing protocol for autoimmune and neurological disorders, as well as a lot more. We'll be talking about who it's for today. But the first thing I want to do is to introduce myself for those who don't know who I am. So this is me. That's what I look like, at least when I'm all dolled up. My name is Rebecca Mills Anderson. I am an IIN certified health coach. I'm also an autoimmune and neurological specialist. I practice in Birmingham, Alabama under IFM certified practitioner, Dr. Jason Koenig at Integrative Health Center of Alabama. I'm also the founder and CEO of My Crazy Journey and mycrazyjourney.com. I'm authoring a book based on my signature protocol, the one we're talking about today, for complex autoimmune and neurological cases. The book is entitled My Crazy Journey, the CEP Survival Guide. We'll be talking more about that in just a moment. As the title implies of that book, I'm the creator of the CEP protocol and have invited healthcare practitioners to this webinar today to learn more about the CEP and how it can help their patients get well in a way that other healing protocols do not offer. I will be covering what is the CEP. I'll be covering why it was created, who it was created for, who it is not for. I'll be discussing its relationship with, as well as the difference from other protocols, how it benefits you as a practitioner to be familiar with the protocol, and even more so, how it benefits you to learn the protocol in detail. I believe that when I tell you more about how this protocol was developed, that this will tell you why the protocol is beneficial to your patients. But I'll also be answering the question, how does it benefit patients? And how does it benefit the practitioner to learn the protocol as well? So the protocol has the ability to help your patient in a way that others cannot, because it was created just for them, not for everyone. I'm going to come back more to that later. So just this week, I got a letter from a patient who had reversed her autoimmune blood disorder on the CEP, even after doing the autoimmune protocol herself. All her tests were in perfect ranges for the first time in 2 years after the diagnosis. So I'll be answering the question also, why shouldn't I or my patient just read the book? So on there on the left, you see a cover of the upcoming book. So that will be the cover. I'll also be giving a sample of that away at the end. And I'll also be giving an opportunity for healthcare practitioners to apply to qualify and be accepted as part of the first group to learn the signature protocol outside my office, benefiting from the experience and years of research that has gone into putting this protocol together and teaching it to patients who need it. So if everyone will open up their chat box, later, I'm going to give an opportunity to ask some questions. So I'll go over that in just a second. For both patients and the practitioners who stick around to the very end, I'll be giving away a very special offer, one that is very exclusive. It's a sample download for the upcoming book that I mentioned before. I ask that you not share this book with other people. I have not even shared it with my editor yet. She does not get a copy until Memorial Day. So it really is an exclusive, unedited first version of the beginning of the book. I will, however, be letting everyone sign up for the waiting list for this book, also towards the end of the webinar today. So unfortunately, questions will be limited. The webinar is about an hour with no questions. I'll be checking in between the sections to make sure that everybody understood things and that I explained things thoroughly. However, any additional questions will either be answered by the book sample or the program itself. But in order to respect your time, I'm limiting questions to those categories. For those who have outstanding questions, if they're very time consuming, I'm gonna have you hold those to the end. And if you'd like to stay afterwards, I'll stay for an extra 5 minutes to answer those kind of questions. If they're very long, However, if they're complex or there's just not enough time to answer them, I don't want to go down rabbit holes or get off subject, and there just simply isn't time to cover or explain everything. But the book will go into many of those questions. So please see the freebie at the end to answer much more. It would literally take me hours and maybe even days to explain all of this in detail. So thank you for understanding these limitations. So we have a lot of information to cover. So I'm going to get started immediately. So the first question I'm going to answer is, what is the CEP? So I have a brief description and a short version of it on the screen right there, but I'm going to go, of course, much more into it today. But it's an extensive diet and lifestyle protocol. It's based on functional medicine and genomics of about 24% of the population. I'm going to talk more about those genomics, really more in detail in just a few minutes of that 24%. But they all this 24% has a common group of genes as well as a common group of gene combinations with each other. So the protocol is based on both the group of genes and the common types of genes. I'll explain that in more detail of what that means. I know that's a little confusing. So, but they have two different sets. They have a like for example, a group of 5 genes that each of them have, and they have 1 gene that each of them have that's part of a bigger group that all have to kind of do the same thing. So the protocol is based on genomics as well as functional medicine. It involves supplements and labs and diet and lifestyle, and even has room to work with other complementary or sister protocols. So I have a list of sister protocols in the book that I layer to help really target individual needs and the differences between each individual case. It also has the ability to go into the emotional spiritual side of healing for those who want that or desire to go with that. The sequel to the book will be covering just that part. So I'm going to go a little bit more to why the CEP was created. So 24% of the population, that's over 78 million people. They have a gene combination that puts them at risk of disease. And what I mean by that is there's a group of genes in their body that by themselves are harmless, as all genes are. And you'll know that, like, a lot of people have heard that genes are like a loaded gun. They don't hurt anyone unless someone pulls the trigger. So unfortunately, in our modern day and age, it's almost guaranteed to pull this trigger because of what people are exposed to. No, it's possible not to. And it's also very applicable of how many times we pull that trigger. Like, did we just maim them a little bit and maybe they just get, you know, chronic sinus infections, or did we pull it several times and then they end up with chronic, like multiple autoimmune diseases and neurological diseases or chronic viruses? It just, you know, each case is a little bit different. So some people have more than one of these gene combinations. So you can, I'll go a little bit about what these gene combinations means in a minute. So, but you could have more than one combination, and this compounds problems for people. So like if I have one combination of genes that makes me susceptible to one thing and another thing that makes me susceptible to another, of course, that's going to be more complex than just having one of those gene combinations. So what pulls the trigger is environmental toxins. So one of these gene combinations would make you susceptible to chemical sensitivities. Another one would make you susceptible to biotoxins. Some make you susceptible to multiple types of toxins. So you kind of get what they call the dreaded effect, the double, triple whammy. It also, these gene combinations make you susceptible to specific diseases like multiple sclerosis or narcolepsy or chronic fatigue syndrome. Some of them also indicate that you should not take certain vaccines like Gardasil. They're specifically saying this gene combination has negative effects when they're exposed to this specific toxin. So that's what I mean by those. So these genes prevent the patient from getting rid of various toxins. And so instead their body stores them. So the other 76% of the population, they produce an antibody that neutralizes this toxin, and then their body takes that toxin to the door and gets rid of the trash. But in this gene population, their body cannot, they are incapable of producing that antibody. And so instead their body just tries to recycle, it tries all these different ways to get rid of it, can't, and then it stores them. Usually in the brain or the nerves or other fatty tissue like the myelin sheath, the nervous system, but also can be in organs or in the blood itself. It is not the MTHFR gene, but often that is also present. It's so much present, the MTHFR, that I myself do not bother to test for it. When asked about MTHFR, Amy Myers says that in her entire career, she has had one patient that did not have the MTHFR. For that reason, it's best to assume that this population also has that gene mutation, in addition to the genes that I just discussed. So Dr. Richie Shoemaker developed a medical protocol to help these patients, but the first step of that protocol is very hard to accomplish. And as I mentioned, that's a medical protocol. It's a take this pill, this is what we have to treat you. So the very first step of that protocol is that they are required to fix their environment and avoid re-exposure. So if their exposure is someone's perfumes or household toxins that are in the actual building materials, that can be very hard to fix their environment and create an environment that doesn't trigger this gene or trigger that storing of toxins. And avoiding re-exposure is also extremely difficult, and many spend years trying to accomplish this and never can, while others have to go to extreme measures. I know people who have decontamination chambers with airlocks, like that level of going. So this can be very difficult in some cases. For many, this is difficult as the patients have often medical bills, disability. They live in areas where almost every building is unsafe. And the dietary needs of these gene combinations have been underestimated, misunderstood, and miseducated, and not addressed even by so-called experts. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do something to supplement the medical protocol. The medical protocol is great, and I'll tell you more about that in just a second. But it doesn't go into everything that we can do to help this patient population. And that's why I created the CEP to help with that. It's also very difficult to fully execute. It does not offer a way to reverse the damage either, or assist the body in healing. So if these toxins have done damage to the body, then we have no way to undo that. And that could be brain damage, nerve damage, optical neuropathy, trouble with your motor skills. It could be damage to the nerves and the blood vessels. It could be anything. It could be central and peripheral nervous system. The list goes on and on. So he did notice that there was gluten sensitivity in these people. But because of these food sensitivity and healing diets and lifestyle changes was not his specialty, he focused only on the medical solutions, with which he did very well. So for more information on Dr. Richie Shoemaker, please go to his website called www.survivingmold.com. He's the one who established these gene combinations, and there has been over 50,000 PubMed papers, several books written on these gene combinations and their connection to chronic illness. He did, however, not only establish what these gene combinations were and like how to identify them and correlate them with what they mean, he developed a way to interpret those tests to help the patient and the practitioner identify which toxins were causing the problem. So when I run them with this gene test for somebody and I convert it and interpret it, it tells me what toxins I'm looking for, that what's the trigger, what's the big bad guy that their body can't get rid of. And so that really helps us not only identify what they need to avoid and help us target that, it also tells us in that gene combination is another gene. It's actually one of a group of genes, and every single one of that person carries that. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So it tells me exactly what toxins are pulling that genetic trigger, what's leading to putting the body under so much stress that is leading to complex autoimmune neurological diseases, chronic viruses, mystery illness, and tells us why one person gets one disease and another gets 5. So it also tells me in there, it always tells me what this diet, what they need for diet and lifestyle wise. It tells me what type of foods is this individual going to start reacting to, what pattern of foods. I'll tell you more about that pattern in just a moment. So Dr. Shoemaker established this way of interpreting the information so that we would know which ones are the big bad guys, but also in there was even more information. So between their genes and their medical history, I then know exactly how to individualize their protocol for their needs. This information is absolutely just amazingly important. So he did develop the way to interpret it, but for that reason, because there's so much more in there than just what toxin they're reacting to, food alone, the medical was not enough. And while it tells me what types of foods they might react to as well, that alone is not enough, because we've not only got the food gene in there, the group of genes that tell us which is the big bad guy, but it jams up their toxin pathways so that all toxins become a problem. So then it's almost like their information highway. Imagine a highway where all the toxins are in the body. It's so busy trying to get rid of something that it can never get rid of, that it can't get rid of the things that it could get rid of. So they get really jammed up with toxins and they become chronically inflamed all over their body from their brain to their toes. So for that reason, lifestyle is also a big part of the CEP. In fact, most of the protocol is focused on lifestyle changes and habits to assist this person to overcome their genetic disposition. It also focuses on helping the patient who often has brain fog, anxiety, difficulty learning new knowledge, chronic fatigue, and more, and a lot of overwhelm. It helps them wrap their head around how to take the first step so that they can empower themselves to start getting well. Let's make sure I'm in the right place. Sorry about that. I've got my notes in front of me and I just want to make sure that I'm not getting lost or anything. Okay. And I did get lost. So let me make sure I'm, here we go. Okay, I hope. Okay, well, we'll just use the slides. Okay, so check-in time. I want to make sure that everybody understands what I have been talking about. So please put in the chat box if you have any questions about like why I developed this CEP, or any questions that I didn't answer about those gene combinations so far. I'll be talking more about them, but if you have any questions of like if anything wasn't clear or didn't make any sense, please go ahead and put the that in the chat box. Okay. Okay, any messages coming up? Okay, I apparently can't see what I thought. Oh, there it is. Okay, so Cassie asked, what are the gene combinations? How do you test to determine if you have them? So I'll be talking a little more about that test. I'm gonna give you the name of that test. It's called an HLA-DRB. It's by LabCorp. Now, if your practitioner is not trained to interpret it, it will look like gobbledygook. So make sure that they understand this whole scenario so that they understand, because I'll be honest, I had to teach my doctors how to interpret them. So it's just not. And honestly, if functional medicine doctors, they're not going to know how to interpret it either, unfortunately. They're just not trained in that. So it's kind of a rare thing for them to be able to. So, you know, just make sure that somebody can do that. Okay, so the patient population, I'm not on this. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you. This is awesome. You're talking my language. Good. I'm glad to hear that we're making sense then. That's the main thing, is I want to make sure that I am making sense. Okay, let's keep trying to hope to find those notes because they were so important. Here we go. Okay. B. There we go. Okay. So the first step of the Shoemaker protocol is to fix their environment. However, the CEP gives them power to take action way before they're able to complete this much harder, intimidating step. For some, they actually choose not to do this and instead are supported long-term by the protocol and functional medicine. So next I'm going to answer, why is the Shoemaker protocol? So Shoemaker, Dr. Richie Shoemaker is the one who developed the medical protocol. He's the one who developed all the research, got all the PubMed studies. I mean, it is scienced out to the wazoo. It is like so solid about these gene combinations. There is no doubt what they are tied to. There's so much research, and it's, I mean, so many symptoms and so many different things. So the Shoemaker protocol is absolutely great, but like I said, many are unable to fully fix their environment. For those who are able, I find that they still struggle with their health, mainly because of, number one, it doesn't provide, the Shoemaker protocol doesn't go in and reverse the damage that is done. However, it also doesn't address a critical gene that they all carry. So they all don't all carry the exact same gene, but I'm going to put it in a very similar way, that simple way that makes it sound like they do. They all carry one of a group of genes that determines how they respond to a pattern of foods. And by the time their body is sick enough to have all these diagnoses, they are responding not only to this pattern of foods, and I don't mean all of them, but a large amount of them. They're reacting to a level that is way underestimated. So they all carry a celiac gene, every single one of them. It doesn't mean it's turned on. It doesn't mean it's a celiac, that you're celiac. I'll go more into what it does mean in just a second, but the gene is there. And I'm going to talk more about that gene in just a second. So the CEP is for those with much more complex issues that cannot be solved by going gluten-free. Even so-called experts have no idea how to respond to these cases, how to respond to this gene, and what the needs are with the diet and lifestyle for these specific patients. This isn't someone who gets tummy aches and then they take away bread and all their problems are gone. This is something much deeper. Okay. So I want to tell you a little bit more about the gene combinations. So let's go to the CEP protocol. Let's see. So, okay, let me back up just a little bit. So they all carry one of the genes associated with celiac disease. That is why it is called the CEP. Originally, this was developed as something called the Celiac Elimination Protocol. I do not use that name anymore. It is very misleading. So please, I ask nobody to refer to the CEP as the Celiac Elimination Protocol, because it's not just a protocol for celiacs. It's for those with much more complex issues that cannot be solved by going gluten-free. And as I have seen from my patient, it is often not solved just by seeing a shoemaker doctor either, at least not in the complex cases that come to my office. There is damage that still needs to be reversed and toxins that still may be also unaddressed, like food. So the CEP protocol, if pursued long-term, is enough to give a person 75 to 95% of restored health if pursued continuously without the shoemaker protocol. I've had patients with a near full recovery of the CEP alone, but they needed continual support in the form of supplementation to the organs affected by continued exposure to these environmental triggers. So that's where the functional medicine, that's part of where the functional medicine comes in. The functional medicine comes in a lot more than that. So when the CEP is combined with the shoemaker protocol, there's no reason for the patient not to reach full recovery and remission, with no reason for continuous support other than taking care of themselves the way the body is asking to be taken care of. So this can happen unless there's individual limitations or extenuating circumstances, such as unavoidable exposure to triggers. This does not mean that they can then go back to their old lifestyle if their old lifestyle did not support their health. An example of an unavoidable exposure would be an airport triggering a flare due to the toxins in the airport, the jet fuel, the mold, et cetera, from old buildings, and other environmental toxins, or a food exposure that can trigger an inflammatory response from their body. So these genes, as I mentioned before, 24% of the general population has one of these gene combinations that makes them susceptible. But in an office full of autoimmune and neurological disease, I wanted you to really listen for this part. It has been every single patient I have tested. Now, true, I only test those I suspect, but I have not gotten one negative test back yet. They have been 100% positive for having one of these gene combinations. I'm probably under testing, to be honest. So these genes combinations, they're very important. They're from a group of genes that control the innate immune system. So for those who aren't sure what that are, the innate immune system, I'm talking more to the patients right now. The innate immune system is the immune system that you're born with. It's the one that's turned on from the day you're born, that starts going to work for you. You don't turn it off. It's on. So this group of genes, which you're born off, it doesn't really turn on or off. They really they're on and then they turn up like a volume. So they're part of the innate immune system from day one. However, in many of these cases, some have a gene in that immune system that can kind of what we call turn on, and what I sometimes refer to as turning up. So let me make that clear. In the off position, it is still affecting how they react to their environment because it's the part of the innate immune system. So once it's turned up or on, as other people say, It's still acting as part of the innate immune system. It's just that now it's creating antibodies to a specific group or pattern of foreign invaders. So that celiac gene is now was first just having a reaction, a regular innate immune system reaction, which is inflammation, way before it ever started creating antibodies. That's when it's on. So these foreign invaders, they're separate from the original toxin that the body can't get rid of. So the toxin that the body can't get rid of because of the gene combination, I'm going to refer to as the primary toxin. The celiac, the foods, the pattern of foods that the celiac gene reacts to, I'm going to call that a secondary toxin. So just to kind of differentiate, because it gets confusing with gene combination or gene group or whatever. So as I said, the gene combinations are very well established and well researched. Over 50,000 PubMed papers on these genes and their effects of health of those who carry them. The genes I mentioned are turning up that are in the group of genes that also make you react to that primary toxin are two specific genes, but they're not the two you may be thinking of. So before we jump to any conclusions, I want to dispel some myths about celiac disease. These myths are in our medical community, but the research and facts tell a different story than the myths that are being taught and perpetuated at the expense of the health of those who carry them. So here we go. Number one myth, your doctor is an expert on celiac disease. False. So that's one of my biggest pet peeves. So my mother and my brother are doctors, and I've talked to them, and they know nothing about celiac disease. In fact, my brother told me that celiac disease is not covered for more than 15 minutes in medical school, and he was told he would never see them. And unless a person dedicates their time, research, and has the critical thinking and experience to really dive into celiac disease and celiac research, they are much more likely to both learn and perpetuate false information. I have been in seminars full of doctors where the speaker has said things that were so dangerous with celiac that it took everything in me I had not to walk out. So to give you the type of dedication it takes to know this, it took me 3 years to confirm that one food was indeed a cross-reactive, confirming the last piece of the celiac pattern. So if you have leaky gut and leaky brain, then 20 parts per million, maybe even 5 parts per million is way too much. So 20 parts per million may be fine for someone who has just gets a tummy ache, but for someone who has neuroinflammation, their brain is dysfunctioning, their whole nervous system is not reacting, their whole body is inflamed, even 5 parts per million could be enough to cause a fight or flight response in their body. Maybe even they respond inflammatory to an animal just ate them. That might be too much. Or something that was derived from but free of, such as gluten removed. I have patients that react to meat if the animal has eaten the grain, even if it is processed and the protein's, quote, removed, so that they can claim it is free of this protein. This level of sensitivity is something that your doctor cannot know about unless they've been through it. There are things that happen in our body that cannot be measured on a lab test or by antibodies, but in a few minutes I'm going to talk about ways that these are very measurable. But they can cause inflammation even without antibodies, because this is part of the innate immune system. Way before we have antibodies, we have inflammation. So many doctors, as a result, because they can't see it, they can't feel it, and they can't experience, they don't believe their patients. They cannot measure it. It must not be so. The patient must be crazy. So in order to find them, even if they're out there, they would first have to believe the patient. Second, they would have to know which test to verify it. And very few are doing both, even when it's very easy to find it. I cannot tell you how often I find a celiac who was told that they were not celiac, ones who have all the evidence to meet the diagnostic criteria. So even if you have inflammation without knowing more about these genes and how they tell you what to look for, they will only tell you, even when I look for all that inflammation, it only tells me what the patient already knows, what the patient has been telling them all along. They're inflamed, it's affecting them this way or that. So go ahead and tell me if you're a patient and you're on this, could you put something in the chat box that tells me, do you know you're inflamed and do you know how it's affecting you? Anybody experiencing that? Okay, so Cassie says yes, inflamed. Brain fog. So that's a great example. Yes, inflamed. Karen Smith, inflamed. Constipation, body inflamed. So all of you already know you're inflamed, but the doctor still has to go and prove that you're inflamed. You guys know how it's affecting you, but the doctor is going ahead and having to prove how it affects you. So that's kind of one of my little pet peeves right there. So other myths is that if you don't have, they think that there's just 2 celiac genes. It is very well proven that there is at least 6 genes tied to celiac genes, and that there are 9 tied to gluten sensitivity. That is an established scientific fact. See, even more autoimmune disease. Every one of you know that you're inflamed. Every one of you know how it's affecting you. So you just tell us. So, but they think there's only 2 celiac genes. That's false. So that can be really dangerous information. So for that reason, people are being misdiagnosed. So there's more than 2 genes. The others are also well established. There's 6 established ones. They are DQ1, 2, 3, 7, 8, and 9. It's also a fact that DQ4, 5, and 6 are also linked to gluten sensitivity. This covers 99% of the population that has a gene linked to gluten sensitivity. That doesn't mean that 99% are definitely having these severe effects or affected by, small amounts or a cross-contamination or anything like that. But when you're already inflamed and your immune system is already on high alert, that's when these things become really a problem. There's so many things that contribute to that. Of the 6 that have been found in celiac patients, 2 are the most commonly known, but they are not the only ones. And for a disease with less than 5% of the people who have it are diagnosed, it would be ignorant to say that 5% of the population represent the under 95% who are not diagnosed. In addition, only 5% of those diagnosed were actually found on purpose. The rest, 95% of those diagnosed that were diagnosed were found because a family member was found first. This is what Dr. Richie Shoemaker calls ass-squared logic. It's a guess based on another guess and treated as fact when there's not enough information to support the first guess. So next one is the myth. If you aren't celiac, these genes don't matter. False. As I mentioned, you're born with them. They're already on alert and looking for foreign invaders before we get there. Leaky gut puts that foreign invader that this gene is already ready for before you even get there. It's only later when it gets turned on and becomes celiac that starts attacking your own body. That's the difference. Dr. Shoemaker actually found that these patients with these genes did have antibodies. Some of them were able to reverse it, but some of them were not. So another false thing is that there isn't enough gluten for your body to react. False. So even if there's not antibodies, you could still be having inflammation. I think it's interesting that I haven't found a single one of dysautonomia that don't carry a specific celiac gene. I think that's very interesting. There's just so many reasons that's wrong. The other myth is that it's just gluten that you have to worry about. That is also false. There are several foods called cross-reactives, and they follow a pattern. I explain that pattern in the book. You can find partial lists of that online about what is a cross-reactive, but there's no complete list out there. The CEP book will come very close, but more importantly, it will tell you the pattern so that you can ask yourself, you can find out if something follows that pattern. And if something follows that pattern, then yes, it can be a cross-reactive. And it's usually something that's your favorite food that you eat a lot of and that also follows that pattern. So those are some of the myths that I wanted to clear up. So is there any questions about the genetics of these patients, the gene combinations, about celiac disease, or about gluten myths? Okay. I'm going to give everybody just a second to type in what they need to. Okay. They can turn off. No, they cannot turn off. Once you turn on celiac, nobody has ever been able to turn it off. So if you were, and there's a question about whether or not you could, if you're not celiac, can you turn the antibodies off? And that depends on whether or not it's attacking you too. So you could be attacking the gluten, which you would have antibodies to gluten, and not be attacking yourself. But once you're attacking yourself, that's the big question. But the diagnostic criteria, there's several different ways to diagnose celiac disease. And one of them is if you have the antibodies and you have the gene, you're celiac, period. And that's just the way it is. There's no need to go any further with that. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with that. Okay, so I think the really important, here I want to get to the meat of the webinar. I want to move away to why the protocol was created, how it was created, because the research I mentioned above, and I want to go past that, fast forward over the 3.5 years it took me to research all the pieces and put it together. And I want to answer what might be the most important 2 questions about the CEP. So who is the CEP for, especially if you do not know your gene status? So Isabella Wentz says there's 2 types of patients. There's those who can clean up their diet and heal their gut, and they're good to go. The second type, she says, has layers and layers that you have to peel back and peel back to get to the root cause. So this protocol, the CEP protocol, is for the second group. It's for the MS, the lupus, the dysautonomia, the multiple autoimmune diseases, the chronic active Epstein-Barr virus, the mystery illness, the ones that scare the practitioner, the ones who they just can't seem to get well. So sometimes, even when treating root causes, even functional medicine doctors forget to ask why. Why is this patient getting repeat adrenal fatigue? Adrenal fatigue is supposed to be fixed in 6 months. So if you have it for years, that's not your root cause, that's a symptom. So why are their hormones imbalanced? Why can I never get their hormones straight? My integrative doctor tried for 3 years to regulate my hormones, and we just got worse and worse, and my hot flashes would never go away, and my temperature dysregulation and my fatigue, and it would just never go away. It was like hurting a cat. It was worse. So why do they still have depression and anxiety? We fixed their gut, we fixed their levels, we've done everything. Why are they still experiencing this? Why are they still sick when we have been treating these so-called root causes since 2008? It's way too long to be treating adrenal fatigue. So why do some people get 1 autoimmune disease, but others get 5? Why does this happen? So these are the kind of questions that will help you figure out if this applies to you. So while after interviewing these patients about their medical history, I always screen them first with a list of symptoms. I usually use the list of symptoms that they will not think to tell me about. I use the list that are from the Dr. Shoemaker's site, survivingmold.com. He has a list of, I think it's about 34 symptoms, and I see how many they have. Even if they just have it sometimes, I have them count it. One of them, for example, is tearing from the eyes. You don't do that every day, but you do it sometimes, like when the wind blows, or sometimes just for no reason while you're putting on mascara, then that one counts. And I do that for that kind of standard for every single one. There are physical examinations that can be performed, visual tests and lab tests, but I always start with the symptoms. Do they fit the profile? If I suspect they do, then my next step is to get a gene test. And just to be frank, I want to repeat this. I've not gotten a single negative back from testing those gene combinations. I want you to let that sink in. Not a single negative back of the ones that I've suspected based on the verbal screening alone. So while this gene test is not a diagnosis, and let's be clear, they have enough diagnoses, it lets me know this person walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it has the genes of a duck, and it tells me why are they quacking so loudly. So here's the people that you should suspect. Those with cascading health issues, multiple autoimmune disorders, neurological disorders. Oftentimes they have both. There's sometimes children who develop these disorders, including gluten-related disorders like ADD, autism, type 1 diabetes, OCD, schizophrenia, bipolar, mood and anxiety disorders. If they're children, they may only have 1 disorder. And if you can catch that disorder, then you can catch it early. And for this reason, the evaluation criteria is different for children. The CEP is for dysautonomia, fibromyalgia, mystery illness patients, the patients who describe what is happening and the doctor looks at them like they're crazy and their symptoms don't fit a diagnosis. It's for those who modern medicine has no answers. It's for those who have already been to a functional or integrative medicine doctor and just couldn't get all the way better. It helped, but it didn't get there. It's for those who have already gone through the Shoemaker protocol and they're still struggling. And for those who cannot fix their environment, so the first step of the Shoemaker protocol can't be performed yet, or they skipped the step and didn't get the results they needed. It's for the celiac still having problems, those with chronic active viruses, those with gross mitochondrial dysfunction and obvious signs of leaky gut and leaky brain, even not so obvious ones like ADD or depression. So again, that verbal screening tool is from survivingmold.com. They have even 12 symptoms, even if just sometimes I test them for these genes. I can also use a tool called cluster screening based on research and evaluating these patients. But regardless of the initial evaluation, I'm always looking to warrant a gene test. And again, not one negative back yet. So some common tests, oh, first, before I go on, I want to make sure anyone has any time. Let's see, Cassie said, I'm so thankful this side of functional nutrition and healthcare exists. I feel like God has laid me down. Thankful for you. Thank you. I appreciate that feedback, Cassie. You know, it really is. It's like, I feel like this is the missing link. There's so many great practitioners and great things happening out there, but I really feel like this was the piece that was missing for patients, patients like you and patients like me. So does anybody have any questions about identifying who is the candidate for the CEP? Like who this would be a good fit for, potentially? Maybe just a few minutes to answer, to type in anything you want. I'm gonna get a quick drink of water just while I give you a chance to ask anything. Okay. So I must have explained myself. Oh, would this cover Lyme patients as well? Yes, it absolutely would. There's something called post-Lyme syndrome. And if you have one of these gene combinations, there's a specific gene combination that means that you would get post-Lyme syndrome. So if you have this gene combination, then you get Lyme disease, and then you treat the Lyme disease, the bacteria is gone, but you're still sick. That's called post-Lyme disease, and it's because the Lyme disease itself, the bacteria was reducing a toxin, and your body could not get rid of that toxin released by the bacteria, so that toxin is still there even after the bacteria is gone, and it's causing inflammation and horrible symptoms, basically, until you can go in and get them. So, okay, good question. So who is the CEP for? So I want to see, it's not for simple case. It's not for someone who with one autoimmune disorder whose life is not drastically altered by the autoimmune. So the mercury poisoning most likely comes along with these cases. Mercury most likely happens through something called MTHFR. That could be something that one of these genes would keep you from getting rid of. There is a gene combination that keeps you from getting rid of chemicals, and that would be under the chemicals rather than a biotoxin. So if that's one thing that you're susceptible to, if you've been exposed to that and your body's not able to get rid of them, then yes, you would be, you know, basically all you need is a gene thing. So yeah, if you're a complex case, if any of that ring a bell, I would suspect that mercury has been, you've got mercury, you've got MTHFR. I've seen mercury in at least one of these patients, and it caused problems very early because of the earliness of the exposure. And MTHFR, we just assume is in everyone because they wouldn't be here if they didn't. So again, it's not for a simple case. It's not for those simple cases where you can just clean up the diet, heal the gut, and they're done. So everybody of you has met someone who has thyroid disorder, or maybe even Hashimoto's, but they're still going to work, they still seem okay, they still have energy, they still have a life, and you know, they may be a little tired or more than they used to, they may have gained a little bit of weight, but it's not really disturbing their life. These are the people that are the simple cases. You can just heal their gut, clean up the diet, and they're good to go. The CEP is not for them. So the exception to the rule of that is when your case is a child, because in a child, you can assume that you just caught it early, but it's not for the case who was perfectly fine before they were 40, 50, 60, etc. If the person is older and has a new diagnosis, they're still very able, and it's their only diagnosis, and they have like really no other problems, then they will be much easier addressed with a less extensive protocol, and the CEP will be unnecessary. So it's not for everyone. The patient must be motivated and the practitioner must be knowledgeable. This protocol came about because of the massive amounts of doctors that did not have this information and did not know how to apply what they did know to this patient population, including my own case. For more information on my story, you can read a short version on my website, mycrazyjourney.com. And for a more extensive version, you can look for my upcoming book, which includes a longer version of my origin story. That will also be included in the sample. So how does this differ from all the other protocols out there? Well, I think that one of the obvious things is this genomics factor. The fact that it's not for everyone who has autoimmune disease, for the fact that it's not just, oh, here's what a whole bunch of research says that all the people in the universe have, you know, are most likely to be sensitive to. These genes tell us exactly what that person will be sensitive to. This gene tells us exactly what order to reintroduce things to. So that's something that makes it different. So this protocol, it definitely walks in the steps of the other protocols. Protocols like AIP and Dr. Terry Walls' protocol called the Walls Protocol. It even incorporates elements of those protocols if it's useful to the individual. I use a lot of that, such as protocols. They also have the sister protocols. The sister protocols are listed in the book, and I layer them with the CEP, and they're part of the CEP in a way, because I use them to balance the hormones. I use them to help balance the blood sugar. So the CEP and its ability to incorporate these others into it, it really creates something new. So it has the wisdom of functional medicine. It heals leaky gut, improves mitochondrial dysfunction, nutrition, removes allergens, etc. But it also involves targeted nutrition and works alongside the other protocols. One of those targeted nutritions, for example, there's very specific nutrition that I use for someone with dysautonomia. It's going to be very different than the nutrition that I use for somebody with thyroid. And that targeted thing is going to be something that really makes that stand apart in this one. Did you say yes, would cover Lyme patients? I missed that answer, ran to the bathroom, sorry. Yes, it would cover Lyme patients, especially those who are still sick after the Lyme is already been treated and the bacteria is gone. That is exactly who it would. And if you have anything besides Lyme, I would get a gene test. I think it's just a good thing. Lyme is a very big part of this community. So let's compare it also to the Shoemaker one. So, I want to finish that. So how it differs from the other functional medicine based ones. It has some solutions. It also includes labs and specific labs and very specific supplements. Those supplements are a humongous part, and if they are not done properly, they will sabotage the entire protocol. So it also, how does it differ from the Shoemaker protocol? So the Shoemaker protocol, as I mentioned, that's the one based on the same genomics, but it's a medical protocol. It's definitely for the same group, but it's not based on functional medicine. It doesn't take into account things like leaky gut, leaky brain. It doesn't address the damage and stress to the body, the mitochondrial dysfunction done by these primary toxins, the one the body can't get rid of. It does not heal that damage. It doesn't address food or lifestyle. The Shoemaker protocol is actually really simple, but really hard to do. The Shoemaker protocol is this: stop being exposed and then get the toxins out of the body. That sounds really simple, but it's really hard to do that first one. The CEP starts before you can stop being exposed, way before that step can be accomplished. I know people who have been looking for a safe place to live for 3 years. I know others that had lived in a tent because they couldn't find safe housing. But the CEP uses food and lifestyle to repair damage. It supports the body's health and regulation. Open detox pathways to alleviate continued stress and damage to the body that is already done. It gives the body what it needs to deal with that stress until the job can be finished by completing the Shoemaker protocol or similar process down the road. So after the Shoemaker protocol, many who do just that are still suffering. And that is prevented if the person does this protocol first, and it's alleviated if the person does the CEP after the Shoemaker protocol. So either combination, or they can be done at the same time. They are really best if done together. So when you combine that original protocol with the functional medicine and the diet and lifestyle, the extensive diet and lifestyle, and the specific supplementation and labs for this gene combination, this group of people with these gene combinations, then you really can serve these people and help them reverse their health. So some of these other protocols like Walls and AIP, they do have some lifestyle tips. But the CEP is much more extensive in the lifestyle and dietary protocols. It gets down to the nitty gritty. It leaves no stone unturned when it comes to those categories. It has recommendations for those trying the Shoemaker protocol, even if they don't wish to do a certified one for individual reasons. So it's something that a Shoemaker certified doctor can add to his certification to further help his patients and get them quicker, better results, especially for those who are having trouble fixing their environment. That step is so challenging that many Shoemaker doctors try to skip it, thinking that their patient won't or cannot complete it. Others who try spend years trying to find housing and work that will not trigger their illness. The CEP gives them the tools to navigate and thrive until they can or will complete that humongous step. So the CEP is just much more extensive and much more complete than these other programs. It puts the wisdom of several of these sources into one place to help those with multiple imbalances: hormonal, detoxification, mitochondrial, neurological, lifestyle, self-love, neurotransmitter function. It covers it all, where another protocol may only cover one of these areas. So it walks in the footsteps of those, but it blends, it combines, it adds to, and it does a couple things that nobody has ever done before at all. So they have specific factors that only CEP contain. Okay. So the main thing that it does, I mentioned that some people choose not to fix their environment or they can't. And what I like about this is it still gives people power over their health, but it also lets them make an informed choices. They're no longer a victim of their health, but they're an active participant in making informed choices. How far they go on the protocol is completely up to them. If they want to take 3 years to fix their environment, great. Or before they even start, great. But they can still progress. They can still be empowered by how they live and how they eat and how they supplement. They know what they're choosing. Rather than just saying, hey, am I going to be treating adrenal fatigue forever? I don't know. That doesn't happen. They say, okay, you can do A and you can stop treating your adrenal fatigue because you can fix it, or you can treat it forever because you don't do B. And so that way they really have a choice and they know what their choices are. And that makes a big difference in their journey. The Patricia Kane protocol any protocol can be incorporated. So any of them. I'll be talking about, like I said, I have some that I use like as standards. For example, you know, because I have like my sister protocols are the ones that I standardly use, like I use repetitively. But any protocol that will treat your specific individual thing can be added and layered into this program. So that has the potential to be your sister protocol to this. But in order to do that, if it involves any type of food or supplementation, you definitely need a CEP certified practitioner to help you with that, or you can sabotage it with a protocol. I'll give an example of that in just a few minutes. Okay. Yes, yes, and yes, resonating with me big time. Bio-individuality is crucial. Are you seeing new patients? If so, in what state? Cassie, if you'll do me a favor, let's talk about that privately. I don't want to spam everybody with that kind of stuff. And I want to make sure I'm addressing the healthcare practitioners. But you and I can definitely talk about that privately in a few minutes. Okay. So check-in time. Does anybody have any questions about how the CEP protocol is different than other protocols? Anybody like not clear on what sets this apart? I'm going to give you guys just a few minutes. Okay. I'm going to grab a drink of water while anyone thinks of questions. Okay. So I'm going to take a break right now, and I'm going to pause before I continue to talk only to the practitioners. So I'm going to be giving a digital sample of the book today in just a few minutes, but I also want to give those who are interested an opportunity to be on the waiting list for the book. The book goes into as much detail as possible about the protocol, including going further into the details of the protocol, although some things just simply cannot be taught in a book. So it's a great supplementary thing. It's a great thing to learn about and to get started on your own, but I'll just be honest, it's so detailed. And it is so, especially when you have brain fog and you're fatigued and, you know, there's so much details, things that there's just things in there that I cannot teach in a book. I can't write down on a sheet of paper. I have to show somebody. And so that's why I'm certifying practitioners, so that they can help supplement these people. But if that's not a problem for you, I'll be coming up with some ways to get you started until you can get with a CEP certified provider. So it goes in as much detail as possible, but there's just some things I can't teach in the book. A lot of great information will be there, as much as they will let me put in there about labs and supplements and things like that. I'll try to include some supplements that are CEP compliant that would be general for everyone. A timeline for reintroductions, suggested supplements, guidelines and resources, additional resources to help the protocol be truly individualized, guidelines for addressing the environmental toxins. I plan on taking the reader step by step through explaining everything along the way. So if you will do me a favor and put your email in the chat box right now, if you would like to be on that list. Like I said, the book won't have everything, but it will have a lot more than I can give in the webinar. While it will have more information than I can give in a session, in one session with a client or patient, there will also be some things that you can only get from that provider. So I've got a couple people putting their emails in, great. So this will be a great companion. So if you're a healthcare provider, your patients will have a better understanding, and trust me that this patient population wants all the information they can get. So again, if you want to be on that waiting list for the book, then now is the time to enter your email in the chat box so that we can put you on the waiting list. Those on the waiting list will get an advanced digital copy before they are available to the public. This should be later this year that the digital copy is ready, and the public will get access at the beginning of next year to paperbacks and hardcovers. If you are watching the replay and you can't put your name into the chat box, if you will send me an email, just reply to any of the newsletters and just say in there, my name is this, my email is this, and I want to be on the waiting list for the book. You must be on the newsletter to receive that advanced copy. That's how I'm going to contact you. If you're not on the newsletter, then it wouldn't be, I won't have permission to contact you. Not on that. Okay. Great. Awesome. Cover's awesome, by the way. Yes, I agree that that cover really just embodies what I'm about, and that's really just taking your body back and getting your life back. Okay, great. Glad to see some people or went on that waiting list. Okay, so somebody's writing that down for me right now. I got my intern on that. She's already creating that waiting list. So we'll be growing that waiting list as we're ready. We're ready. It goes to my editor on Memorial Day. So chop chop for me. Okay. So this next part is really geared towards the healthcare providers. They're the ones I'm truly talking to today, and I want to make sure that they hear this. So I'll be giving out the book sample in just a few minutes for everyone that's attending today, including patients. But the next pieces of information, I'm really going to be focusing on them. Okay. So how does this help my patients? So in order to help the healthcare provider, we have to help the patients. So I think I made it very clear that this is something that you can offer your patients that nobody else is offering. So it helps when other protocols fail. It gives them answers that no other protocol does. It helps them when nothing else can. It's up to them, and it empowers them because it lets them decide how far they want to take it, how well they want to get. The people who have been on this for a couple of years are getting better every single year. And that is amazing because and that's even before they fix their environment. And so when they fix their environment, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to go all the way to health. So even though I have a book coming out on this protocol, like I said, there's some things I simply can't teach. I cannot teach you which almond butters are cross-contaminated. And unless you've been completely clean and unexposed and healed, and then had that almond butter, there's no way you can know that. There's a way the brain thinks as a result of going through this and learning the hard way that cannot be taught, but it can be shown. One does not have to have it in order to learn. My husband was the first person to learn it without experiencing it. And now other husbands have also learned. Some things I just can only teach by showing. And for some of you, this is an opportunity. I'll give it a minute. So this protocol is very helpful to your patients. By having the knowledge and resources to help this group of people, you're able to help those for whom there is no other help. So if you're already helping them medically or in other ways, then you can help them even more. When I went through this, my functional, traditional, and conventional medicine doctors could not help me. They didn't know why I kept getting sicker and gathering more diagnoses, even while under the long-term care of integrative and functional medicine doctors, who were definitely improved my health, but they couldn't keep me from getting sicker and more diagnoses. But with this information, they could have helped me. So now you can help others like me and also like my patients. 24% of the population, in fact. That's over 78 million people in this country, all with a wide variety of diseases. People who desperately need this information, who desperately need this empowerment over their health. You can make a very, very good living doing this because there will be a high demand. And chances are you will have to actually turn people away. So these are a couple quotes from some of my patients. So this is the first one. I started CEP 4 weeks ago. As I indicated, I was diagnosed with ITP, an autoimmune blood disorder, almost 2 years ago. Even with trying an autoimmune diet on my own, my blood values had not returned to normal since diagnosis. Today, I had a checkup with my hematologist, and my blood values were all in perfect range. Now, it's unusual to have a a result this quickly, but for this person, her body was so responsive. It was just so head on that hers just, this was what she needed. As I said, she had already done an autoimmune diet already. So I think that probably primed her body a lot. This is the second person who came from a pretty standard American diet. Rebecca was able to show me why this happens, something my hematologist of the last 3 years hasn't been able to explain. My hematocrit came down 50,000 points. Her hematocrit was in very, very, very high, I'd say 90,000. So she was almost in normal ranges by the time we finished the program. Here's another patient. I've been on the healing phase for a few weeks, and now my extreme fatigue has gone from a 10 to a 3. That is a humongous improvement for somebody who has chronic fatigue syndrome. Let's go back over, make sure. If anybody has their mic on, if you'll turn it off, just so that any background noise isn't distracting. Okay, for some reason it's not letting me, oh, I know why. Let's go back here. So this is where number 2. Okay, so the next question I'm going to answer is, why shouldn't my patient or I just read the book? I think I've been pretty clear about, there's just some things I cannot teach in the book and that there's more, but I want to go on a little bit more talking to the providers about why they should not try to do that. So other than the things that we've already said, so most patients don't have the time, energy, or interest to read a book, especially when they have brain fog, chronic fatigue, and overwhelm. They want information, but they've got a little funny. Karen, his PowerPoint's still a little wonky. Can you see you know what, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stop share, and then I'm gonna reshare. And that should get it. Okay, should be able to see it now. I wanna make sure also that I can get the chat. Okay, there we go. Should be good now. And let's see, okay, good. Okay, so most patients don't have the time, energy, or interest to read a book, especially when they have brain fog, chronic fatigue, and overwhelm. And this is overwhelming. Let's just put it simply to the way that all the patients will understand. Spoonies don't have spoons for that. The other thing is that they need someone to hold them accountable. This is a lot of steps. Chronic illness can be a cha-cha, 2 steps forwards, 2 steps back. And it's very easy to say, hey, I feel better, I'll stop now. And then another symptom comes up to play and they get frustrated. So they need people to hold them accountable. They need you to help them learn how to ask the right questions before they consume something, when they fix their environment, how to do it, what resources are there to help them, what supplements are safe. Is this supplement going to give me a flare? I'll give you an example of that in a few minutes. So patients could get very frustrated reading the book. Others want the information, but it will still overwhelm them. Some don't have time to read the book because it's everything they have to keep their job. They may have extenuating roadblocks. So they, not only the book will not go all the way, but they'll need the functional and integrative medicine to be successful, period. They cannot do it without labs and supplements. Functional medicine can't do it without the training. So they will end up like a doctor I'm going to tell you about in just a moment. Let's see if I can get there, because I think this story. So it's faster to do it with you. So doing it on your own, even your most motivated, obsessive, intelligent, a diligent client, it will still take them 3 to 5 years to do it by themselves. They can get 8 months, in 8 months, they can get at least 3 years of that done with you. They will go so much faster. They'll need help with labs, tests, and supplements. They will need help blending all the complementary protocols. That would actually require many books, and some of them don't have time, especially the severe cases. There's too many moving parts, and they need your help to break it down into steps to help the overwhelm. So again, the practitioner won't be able to fully execute it. There's no point in halfway doing this. There's just no point. You're either doing it all the way or you're just playing around. So you'll be missing some very important pieces if you try to do it on your own. So the other thing, also, a practitioner won't know what supplements are compliant, and not knowing will sabotage the protocol. So I'm going to give you a case study. There is one of the sister protocols is called the Walsh protocol. I use this for people who are having psychiatric issues as a result of these toxins. And it's a freaking-tastic protocol. It's just absolutely wonderful, but it doesn't take into account this gene combination. So I had an applicant come in the other day, and they were just so obvious. They had so many of the symptoms. I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to gene test you. And they were doing the Walsh example, the Walsh protocol, and it had started to help, and then it started to get worse. And so the mother pulled out a sheet of paper and showed me what the child was on. And all over it were the cross contaminations, and the cross reactants were all over this, because this wonderfully educated, helpful person did not know what supplements were for this individual, could not gene test them, didn't know how to apply that information, didn't know how to put the information together. Where if they had combined, well, my knowledge with the Walsh example, their results could have been amazing. And I hope they still will have that chance to do that. So that's what I mean by the practitioner. The book can't teach you that. So that's something that only a certified practitioner, I'm going to teach my certified practitioners how to find supplements that fit these other protocols, or the protocols they're already doing, or the protocols that they could be doing, and make sure that they are compliant and not sabotaging the dietary protocol, as well as just knowing what almond butter to get or whatever. Okay. So let's go forward. So freebie time, yay. So I am going to add into the box a link. So this is, after this, I'll give all healthcare providers an opportunity to learn more. And so after this, the information is only for the practitioners. So patients, you may leave the call. This won't be of interest to you. It'll just be boring shop talk. But we'll be talking about how the protocol benefits the practice, and how to qualify more to learn more before the book hits shelf. And that opportunity is just for healthcare practitioners. So I'm going to share a file real quick. Let's make sure I get that. Okay, yeah, this one right here. And there is a link right there. So anybody who wants, that's coming, it's loading right now. So anybody who wants the sample of the My Crazy Journey Survival Guide, just click on that link and you'll be able to download it right to your computer in a PDF form. So as I said, if anybody else wants to be able to, get that, just go ahead and get that. And I'm going to let the patients download that and then hang up if they've gotten everything they need. And me and the practitioners will continue on so that they can learn how to learn more. Okay, so now I want to talk down and dirty about how this really benefits your practice. We're going to talk numbers here. We're going to talk about like what's in it for me, like from a total business standpoint. We are all doing what we do because we want to help people, and there's no lie about that. But we're also going to be really honest and really real. And we do this, we can't help people if we don't make a living doing it. If we go broke trying to help people, then we can't help people. So I'm going to talk numbers here. So it benefits your practice if you actually know the protocol, know more than what the book is having. Being familiar with it is not enough. You're not going to get the results from going, this is not going gluten-free or, taking off cross reactants. This goes much further. So one of the ways I want to explain about how that goes further is people don't realize that when it comes to the innate immune system, that your body can react on a homeopathic level. So if you believe that homeopathics work, and we know they work because babies and animals respond to them. So there's not a placebo effect. They have no expectations. So the level of cross-contamination that needs to go to when you have leaky gut, leaky brain, and chronic inflammation, this is, oh, freebie link. Can you please repost? Okay, I apologize. I'm going to pause real quick to give this person their link. Share file and meeting. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to share it one more time. Somehow it's only letting me type to one person. Okay. Okay, I see what's happening here. Okay, here I go, I'm fixing it. Okay, it's saved to everyone, share file and meeting. Here we go. Apparently it only went to one person, so I apologize for that. Okay, so it's loading right now. We'll kind of start over on the practitioner part then. Okay, so does everybody, let me know if you can't see it. Okay, no responses that can't see it. So unless one pops up, I'm going to kind of start over on the practitioner part. We'll give everybody a few minutes. Everybody grab a good drink of water while people get a chance to download that didn't, and anyone who's a practitioner will stay on and kind of restart that part. So the last section is only about 10 or 15 minutes while we get, like I said, down and dirty. Okay. So for those who are healthcare practitioners, listen up. I think it's obvious that this program has what others have, as well as something that no other protocol has. It is more extensive. It is more targeted. It is based on something that no other protocol has, with solutions that are common sense science, but that haven't been done before. But it takes great know-how, and it takes a great desire to help others and make a living doing just that. So I'm going to let about 5 practitioners be trained extensively in executing this program. They'll be given the exact action plan that I use to execute success to these patients, exact tests, supplements, etc. But first I want to tell you more about how it benefits your practice. So it benefits it if you actually know the protocol, like really in detail. That's the only way it's going to work. I can get someone started, but I cannot finish them and get them where they need to go without all those nitty-gritty details. Your ability to help people will attract patients from all over the country. If you're willing to do video consults, then you will have people from all over the country wanting to do this. The other thing is that these programs are profitable because you are spending 8 months with somebody and you're taking them step by step and holding their hand and spending time with them. And you're adding labs and supplements and things like that. If you package it all together, you will regularly sell these for $10,000 or more a piece. And that's not a greedy price. It's because we spend more than 5 minutes. We spend more than 15 minutes with these patients. We teach them how to do what they need to do. We include the labs, and that's assuming you don't make a thing on the labs or supplements. If you charge more for that, that's depends on how your way does business. Okay, so yes, definitely profitable. So here's your opportunity to get certified as a CEP provider. So how to get certified? I'm only going to accept a maximum of 5 people. This is my alpha group. So you've got to qualify to apply. So I am certifying a maximum of 5 people. You must, and here's the qualifying. So in order to apply, you need to meet these qualifications. You must be a healthcare professional. You must work with or want to work with this patient population. You must have some experience either personally or professionally with this patient population. So either you need to have been working with them as your patients, or you need to have been one or had a mom or son or daughter that you have been working with so that you understand that point of view. You also must be willing to learn the protocol just like your clients and patients would learn it. That means if I ask them to keep a food diary for a certain period of time, I'm going to ask you to do the very same thing. You need to walk through their shoes, or you will have no idea how to walk through their shoes. So how can you teach them to walk through their shoes? And then you must be accepted into the training. So let's talk a little bit more about that. The 5 that are accepted will get 21 group sessions with me where they will learn the program. They'll be able to ask questions, learn the details of the program and how to execute it. It will include all the handouts, the action plans, the resources, the guides, the supplement lists, everything that you need to execute the protocol and that your patients need to be successful. You'll have access to me and my consulting on your cases during your training with the option of access afterwards. There will be a huge discount because you will be the first group invited to go through this training. As I said before, you will sell this program from anywhere to $9,000 to $12,000 per person. I generally sell this for around $10,000 to $11,000. That includes labs and supplements. If you are a health coach and you don't have access to labs, then you will want to work with a functional medicine doctor for those labs, but you will be the expert as far as the protocol, and you will still make about $7,000 or $8,000 in services alone. Okay, so it's very profitable. So here's the cost of the CEP training. And I apologize, I made a little mistake right here with the $sign. So there's 21 one-hour live trainings with available recordings. So I have two prices here because this is what I would charge just for the services. So if you're a health coach, if you're a specialist, then that's what you, depending on what you charge per hour, but a specialist charges more. So that's what I would charge if I was just for the services. To give somebody recordings, which we usually, when I do one-on-ones, they have a no recording agreement. So they're not allowed to record it. So having access to those recordings for longer than that 1 hour, I would charge again another $76.02. So that's how I came up with that $15,204. All the handouts and materials, if I was to box them up and sell them because they are intellectual property and because how much is involved, I would definitely never give that away for less than $250. The certification for the CEP, I know when I got certified, I have to pay $100 to sit down for the test. I have to pay another $100 for the certification. So I put that at $200. Later, I'll probably be one of those people. Then there's some extras. For example, access to a members only Facebook group and discussion and additional support for up to a year. That is worth $1,200. Email support if needed for a year. Most of the time I would have people put me on a retainer for that. I'm gonna include that in, that's worth $720. And an early copy of the book upon availability. You'll get a free copy of that digital copy when it's available. And of course, we know that being able to help people like never before, we just can't put a price tag on that. So if I was to give you those things individually, it definitely would be quite a number, over $17,000, almost $18,000. And later I'm gonna be charging the group price for $4,000. But because you are the first group to go through this training, I have made the alpha group price for this first group only, which is a maximum of 5 people, to be $2,000 per provider. Okay, so how to apply? First, you must qualify. You must have signed up for the webinar as a healthcare provider. You must be willing to provide a digital copy of your license, certification, or other proof of your professional status. You must have some experience with the patient population, either professionally or personally. You must be willing to sign a non-disclosure agreement. That means that you won't share those videos, sell those videos, distribute the handouts or any of the intellectual material outside of helping your own patients. You must be willing and able to tell me why you want to be a CEP provider. I want to hear about your passions. I want to know why this is something that's up your alley, why you should be one of the 5. By the time the replay is done, this will go to over 60 healthcare professionals. So to narrow it down to 5, it's going to be a challenge. So I really want someone to stand out and really tell me why they're passionate and why I should pick them. So definitely, please let me get to know you. So how to apply? So if you are able to meet these qualifications, and then you are invited to apply for acceptance. So if you're live here on there, I ask that you enter your email address into the chat box now, along with your first name and your professional title. If you are watching this through the replay, then if you will respond to the email that I sent you in this, and let me say, I qualify, please let me apply, and give me your first name and title. And then I will send you an invite letter with instructions to help you complete the application process by the end of the business day on Monday. If you do not receive it for any reason, please contact me directly. So now if you make those qualifications and if you'd like to apply for the training to be a CEP certified provider, please enter your email address into the chat box now, along with your first name and title. Okay, I'm going to give anybody a few minutes to do that. Okay, and I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions concerning the application or qualifications. Okay, I'll give everybody a few minutes to ask any questions they have. Okay, so if nobody has any questions, then I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you. If you want to learn more about the CEP or about me or any of that kind of stuff, you definitely, you can go to www.mycrazyjourney.com. You can find me on social media with #mycrazyjourney. Thank you so much for attending the webinar, the CEP Healthcare for Providers. Rachel asked if we will receive the recording afterwards, if we want to think about it. I will be sending it to the healthcare providers only who request it. I'm debating exactly how. At first I was only going to give it to people who shared it on social media, but because I have so many people who are going to be watching the replay, I may extend that since I have to wait for those emails anyway. So definitely, Rachel, if you'd like, if you could send me an email requesting the replay, I'm probably going to open it up to healthcare providers to have a replay, since we had 60 people signed up, and I definitely want to make sure that all those people get to see it the first time and get their opportunity. Okay, so absolutely. So if you're a healthcare provider, you can get a replay by emailing me, respond to me, any of my Take Your Body Back newsletters. Let me know that you'd like a replay. If you're watching this on replay and you already know that you want to be one of those 5, you will have until Monday at the close of business to apply for that, to be one of those 5. So thank you so much for attending the webinar, everybody. Again, my name is Rebecca with My Crazy Journey. I'll stay around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions. And then other than that, everybody have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. I'll be answering questions through the chat box. I'm going to put myself on mute so you don't have to hear me breathe. And I'll wait about 2 minutes and then I'll be hanging up. Okay, if nobody has any questions, I'm going to end the meeting. And I will see you on the Take Your Body Back. Oh, wait, I see a question. Is there any other option to receive this info other than your book or working with you one-on-one as provider? No, there's not, unfortunately. There's just no other way that I can teach the information except for, well, you're not working with me one-on-one, actually, you're working with me as a group. If somebody was to work on with me one-on-one, I would charge them honestly the same as a patient because of the time and expertise. Can you share this with your shoemaker doc? Yes, he can view it. Just actually, you know what? I'd rather you hold off on that. I'm actually sharing this with Dr. Shoemaker himself. He will be reviewing the information. You definitely can tell him about the information, but I don't want, you know what? I think, yes, you know what? I'm going to take that back. You can share this with the shoemaker doc because there's nothing in this that somebody could then reproduce and therefore, you know, steal my intellectual material at this point. So absolutely, you can share the information with the shoemaker doc. That'd be great. Thank you so much. But like I said, Dr. Shoemaker will be reviewing the work as well. So cross your fingers and hopefully he'll see what we see. Okay. Okay, I'm going to end meeting for now. If nobody has any more questions, again, have a wonderful night. And thank you so much for attending today.